Everybody see a little pop-up?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. That's your blanket statement that your consent to be recorded. Okay, good morning, everybody. We are live and prepping for our discussion on the Pennsylvania redistricting. I'm going to wait a few minutes to see if there's any other people who is going to join us on the Zoom. Good morning to everybody who is joining us on Facebook this beautiful Saturday morning, wherever you're joining us from.
What is that, Lauren?
Hear my cuckoo clock?
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're going to remind everybody to just stay on mute at this time. If you are not one of our speakers, I will mute all the participants if we need to, and we are ready to go live. It is 9 o'clock. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our live stream discussion on the Pennsylvania redistricting. We are joined this morning by two of our guests, Debbie Trudeau of the Fair Districts of Pennsylvania, as well as Michael Waxenberg, who is a mapper. I am also going to be introducing my wonderful co-host, also another board member of the League of Women Voters of Monroe County, Dave Super. Good morning, Dave. How are you this morning?
Great, Lauren. Good morning to you and good morning to everyone. Special thanks to Debbie and Michael for prepping for this and being with us this morning. Really appreciate your willingness to volunteer for this event. So I want to talk about Debbie a little bit. Debbie is a former upstate New Yorker who moved to central Pennsylvania in 2005, one of my favorite places, Center County. She is a retired professional violinist and teacher, and she currently volunteers for Fair Districts, Pennsylvania, Center County, and is a local coordinator and public speaker. Michael Waxenberg lives a little bit north of Stroudsburg in Pike County. He's been there for 32 years. He is a financial regulator by day, focusing primarily on technology risk. He's drawn prize-winning maps for Congress and the state Senate. He is active in the advocacy work for Fair Districts, Draw the Lines, Common Cause, and the Princeton Gerrymandering Project. Good morning to both of you. I'd like to remind everyone that the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization, and we are doing our best. We will do our best in this presentation to honor that, our legacy in that regard, and our speakers will be doing that as well. So our total time today of our presentation is approximately 1 hour. Our speakers will be giving a presentation for about 45 minutes. Please, and then we will have 15 minutes for questions at the end. Please hold your questions to the end if possible, or you can put them in the chat and Lauren will be picking them up and we will be answering them after our speakers have concluded their formal presentations. So right now, let me turn it over to Debbie Trudeau.
Hi, thank you very much, David. I really appreciate being invited to speak to this. We are also a nonpartisan organization with Fair Districts. We are aware that both the major parties are guilty of this, but in Pennsylvania, we have one side of the coin. In a state like Maryland, it's the other side. So I'll share my screen now and we'll start my presentation. Thank you. Let's see if I can get this going. Okay. I think. All right. So is everybody seeing my first slide, a mapping conversation?
Not yet.
Okay, I have, why do I say that? Who can share, all participants or only host is what I'm saying. I think I have to make this go away. This did not show up earlier. How about now?
Nope.
Okay, let's try again. Here we go.
Yes, we have it.
Yes,
up
we
now.
have it now.
Okay, and you have it full screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, so here we are. Let's get going. So just a real quick review, gerrymandering is manipulating districts for partisan gain. This is our poster child for being the worst gerrymandered state in the country before the redraw of our congressional districts in 2018. This is the district that incorporates Philadelphia, and you can see how strangely shaped it got by 2013, and this is with the aid of computers. So gerrymandering 101, this was my favorite explanation at polling locations when we were collecting petition signatures. If you have an uneven division of partisans, 60-40 split, you can do perfect representation, which is nice. Nobody lives in districts that are complete monoliths. You can get districts that are very compact, but clearly unfair. And you can get districts that are neither compact nor fair, and where the minority party dominates. And this is what we have in Pennsylvania. The techniques for doing this are the sweetheart deal, where it's a lot about incumbent protection. You know, I'll keep my district, you keep your district. Cracking splits apart a community and gives power to one side. Packing does the opposite. It gives the majority party a few lopsided wins and then divvies the rest up among the other party. And then there is also hijacking, where you can draw an incumbent or a particular right off the map. And with our situation now, where we're going from 18 congressional districts to 17, this is a concern. Who's going to be losing their seat? And why does this matter? So gerrymandering, we say, is a problem because voters lose their voice. And rigged districts protect the incumbents. The incumbents control the rules for moving legislation. The rules will favor the party leaders, and the leaders turn around and draw more rigged districts. So it's a vicious cycle. It's really hard to break. Because of incumbent protection, it's really hard to challenge. And in the last election, almost a third of our districts in the House were unopposed. And that's not good for democracy. So in Pennsylvania, we have an agenda fairness score of 0. This means we have absolutely no policies in place for efficient, effective moving of important legislation. Compared to Colorado, which has 100%, when they decided that it was time to end gerrymandering in their state, they went first proposal to passing legislation in 3 months. Here in Pennsylvania, we've been trying to accomplish this since 1991, and especially a great effort since 2017, when Fair Districts PA really got off the ground as a subset of the League of Women Voters. So what we're looking at now is population shift that has come about with the census. These colors have nothing to do with partisan gains or losses. They're all about which counties gained or lost population. The stronger color gained or lost more. So Center County in the middle of the state where I live was one of the big gainers. And then you see those deeper orange ones in the state across the north and then the southwest. And there are 13 counties that population there. And you'll notice that this also somewhat corresponds to where we have more urban areas and where we have more rural areas. So when you have sparser population, this means districts that will be geographically larger, excuse me, to accommodate the population. So now we're going to have a problem where the cost per person to provide services increases. When things are more spread apart, you have greater cost per person with roads. It's much more difficult to meet your legislator in person because they're so far away from you, and they're less likely to have satellite offices in huge districts. So some of the things that cost more: school funding. It's more expensive to provide school services to a more spread out population. Transportation costs like school buses, road maintenance, healthcare services are much more difficult to provide. Hospitals are generally found in more urban areas because there's the infrastructure to support them. The rural areas also often have spotty cell phone and internet access. So it's an economic challenge. Even if people wanted to leave the cities and go to these areas to work remotely, it's very difficult. Prison gerrymandering is a thing. Prisoners are often ignored by the legislator in the district where the prison is, and also by the legislator from their home district, because the prisoners very often, it's really difficult for them, even if they can. And this distorts the balance of constituent population and legislator accountability. The good news is that the Legislative Redistricting Commission passed a resolution at one of their early meetings to reassign prison populations into their home precincts. And the result is going to be smaller rural counts and increased urban counts. So that's going to spread our districts even more in the rural areas. So here's a map of our Senate districts in the state, and you can see which Senate districts gained and lost particularly. That northern one on the eastern side of the state is a huge loss. The deep blue in the southeast and the area around Pittsburgh, those had big gains. And you'll see that I want to show you, let's see, oh, where did it go? I want to show, can I do this? Nope, I can't do it. Okay, never mind. The population shift in the House districts is similar, but now we see a big gain in the center of the state that we didn't see when it was Senate districts. I'm going to back up to that. In the Senate districts, no real change in the middle of the state, but in the House districts, there is a big change. So it affects each chamber differently. So once again, kind of take a mental photograph of this map because it's going to give you some background as we get into discussing some sample maps. So Michael Waxenberg is going to take over and discuss some maps that are hypothetical. None of them, I want to just reiterate this, none of them will become an actual map for redistricting, but these are the kinds of ideas that people are submitting when there are public hearings. So what are the mapping priorities? And again, Michael's going to discuss this further, but here's a first pass at the idea. The winners of the Draw the Lines competitions had to make some difficult choices. There are many different things to prioritize. So minority communities and the Voting Rights Act are first, that's a legal requirement. Minimizing splits in counties, municipalities, and precincts is a split from the Pennsylvania Constitution, and that's a requirement. Respecting geographic contiguity. Are there rivers or mountain barriers? Are there highways that connect certain regions that are intelligent to consider? Where I live in Center County, there are mountain ridges that run diagonally across the region. So we're not going to see lines that run north-south in a good map. We're going to see lines that run on the diagonal and respect those geography. A lot of people are thinking that tweaking our current districts is not possible because they are so badly gerrymandered to begin with, and that we need a fresh start. So there's a priority. Partisan bias. Pennsylvania's last set of congressional maps had a 22-point bias favoring Republicans. And oh, I lost it. Come back. Okay, so yeah, so that partisan bias gave us congressional districts that were 13-5 favoring Republicans in 2012, but that bias dropped completely away in 2018 redraw after the challenge in court. Responsiveness. Does your legislator consider all of his constituents or just the partisan voters that he needs to depend on in a primary election? Michael's going to cover more of this later. So just to show you the area around Monroe County, this is the current congressional district on the left. And these are those districts showing the partisanship, the lean of them currently. So we have the congressional districts, and then we have the Senate district. And again, the partisan lean on the right. Then we have the House districts and the partisan lean on the right. And just by way of sharing how it's different where we are, I have here central Pennsylvania. This is my neighborhood. These House districts have our urban community of State College split up between 4 different legislators. And this is a big part of why I am motivated to volunteer at fair districts. So let's go on. This was a proposed map. This is the proposed partisan lean that would result from that. And notice how much more spread out the districts are, that we have much more mixing across the state. It's not this monolith of red in the center and this single huge area of blue on Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. So again, none of these maps are going to become anything. It's the LRC, the Legislative Redistricting Commission, that will be drawing the maps for our Pennsylvania House and Senate. And it is the entire assembly that will be drafting a bill to create maps for Congress. So the clock is ticking. September 15th, revised census details. Apparently I was wrong. The prison adjustments are not into the census data just yet. I will fix that. But September 21, there are hearings about the details of districting problems. They are really encouraging voters to submit tiny granular things about their specific areas so that they have real details to work with as they consider the maps that they're drawing themselves. If you just write and say, I don't like gerrymandering, that's not helpful. But if you write and say, don't split along this geographical ridge or this highway, because this is how the community works around that. October 13th is the last date to submit comments to the congressional districts. The Republican caucus are the only ones so far handling that because they hold the majority in both chambers. They're not publicly acknowledging any input from any of the Democrats in the assembly. There is a public hearing on October 13th and 14th in the central part of the state. November 1st, we need initial maps from the LRC because there's a required period of 30 days for public comment. They have until December 1 to submit, December 1st, they can submit revised maps. And by December 24th, they need to have final maps that will then go to the State Department, who need finished maps by January 24th to meet deadlines for candidates for the next election to get their petitions together. So the clock is ticking and time is now. October is really an important month. So testimony is advocacy power. It creates a legal record so that if there are legal challenges to the maps later on, there is a record saying that we told you early on there were problems with these maps. You should not be surprised. It calls attention to specific areas of concern, lets the decision makers know we are watching, and that is really important. There are some people in the assembly who are saying that 10 years ago, no one was paying attention, and now it's all over the news that voters want a different type of map. So this advocacy builds pressure for these more fair maps. It also helps that we have divided government right now. The last time around, we had a Republican majority Supreme Court, we had a Republican governor, and Republican majority assembly. And now the assembly is Republican, but their bill has to pass signature of a Democratic governor. The Legislative Redistricting Commission is equal 2 and 2 major party leaders from the House and Senate, but the 5th person is a Democrat, and by all accounts, a very straight shooter and fair person. Everybody is really pleased with the way he's been managing their meetings and running the commission. So we have divided government there, and if anything goes to challenge, there is a 5-2 majority in the Supreme Court. So there is a lot of incentive to draw fair maps from the get-go so that we don't need to spend time battling this in court. And where am I not going forward? Okay, so advocacy. Our goal is to inspire you to prepare testimony and comment. Speak out about the problems you see. There's a link here for learning how to do that. There are some really good tips at this link to help you be as efficient as possible with your time. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's all kinds of help there. The next is contacting the House State Government Committee to tell them your thoughts about new congressional districts. The third is contacting the Legislative Redistricting Commission about submitting comment for the Assembly. There is a link to the governor's office. I will get that to you. I will plan to send a follow-up sheet to everybody on this meeting and include links there. For more information, you can go to Draw the Lines PA. They have a lot of good links to some of these same materials, how to draw maps, what the criterias are, and how to advocate. Dave's Redistricting is a mapping site that's pretty simple and basic. When you pull up Pennsylvania and pull up the congressional map, you can look at the existing map and you can copy that and tweak it. So you can try your hand at it. It's not that hard. Over 4,000 people have participated in the Draw the Lines competitions, and it's really interesting. Fair Districts PA has lots of good information and links. There's information on Facebook with Fair Districts, our site. We try to keep it fresh with articles that are in the news. And questions for me as a speaker can be mailed to this address here. So this is the end of my part. I am going to stop my share and hand this over to Michael.
Thanks very much, Debbie. I'm going to attempt to share my DRA screen. Debbie mentioned Dave's redistricting application, and that is what I'm going to be showing you this morning as we go through sample maps. Just a few additional notes before we dive right into the maps. First of all, with regard to testimony, I want to make sure everyone's aware that there will be an opportunity to testify to the House Government Committee in Kingston. That's on October 20th. It was supposed to, I'm sorry, October 18th. It was supposed to be September 20th. It's been rescheduled. You've still got 3 weeks to submit any written testimony that you'd like to give them, or to book a block of time. They'll allow you 10 minutes to get in front of Seth Grove's committee and share your thoughts on the congressional map in our area. Again, the government committees draw the congressional map. The Legislative Reapportionment Commission draws the maps for the state Senate and for the House. Why is that hearing in Kingston? Basically because from Harrisburg's point of view, northeastern Pennsylvania ends at Wilkes-Barre. Those of us in Pike and Monroe don't really carry a whole lot of clout. But if you're willing to make the trip to Kingston, I think it's well worth it. I have testified in front of the LRC twice. That was a great experience. Sharon Nordenberg is doing a wonderful job of soliciting public comment and encouraging people to bring their local insights, knowledge of their communities, knowledge of interactions with other communities, and any geographic quirks of the area that the commission may not be aware of. Let's talk a little bit about redistricting criteria, because I think some of the questions that Dave got ahead of time indicated some interest in more clarity on what the criteria are for redistricting. And I think another question just came in through the chat, and I will address that. Tiny details on your local community. For example, if there are two adjacent neighborhoods that a mapper might be inclined to lump together, but actually, in your opinion, have more common interests with communities that may be farther away, but which are in opposite directions, that's really great information. If there are communities that have been split apart on a past map, this is really a great thing to stress in front of the LRC in particular. If you know that your community has been pulled apart or been separated from a community that has clear shared interests in the past, by all means, they need to know what those shared interests are and how you'd like to see the map different the next time around. The basic criteria for drawing any map, any congressional or legislative map, are as Debbie described. And sometimes it's a bit tough because you've got this list of 9 or 10 criteria, and there are no clear instructions that apply to all maps about how to prioritize those criteria, or which ones you must obey as opposed to the ones that are sort of nice to haves. It varies depending on the state, depending on local circumstances. But as a mapper, I tend to look at the criteria in a few categories. First of all, there are the hard criteria, the sort of binary ones that you either meet or you don't meet. And probably the clearest of those is contiguity. You can't have breaks in a district. You can't have a district at any level that consists of two pieces of real estate that don't intersect with each other at all. So you can't just arbitrarily put Bradford County together with Monroe County and say that's a district because it has the right number of people. They at least need to touch. Now, even contiguity, which seems like such a simple concept, actually becomes a little bit complicated once the professional partisan mappers get their hands on the maps, because they will string together chunks of territory using any device available: parking lots, strip malls, roads. In Ohio, actually, the Partisan Commission just proposed a map that holds one state Senate district together with a strip of the Maumee River, because they wanted to pack together as many Democrats as they could. And the best way to do that was to string together two cities that are connected only by a waterway. So even contiguity is a tough one. The second one that's a hard criterion is population equivalence. I mean, because of the principle of one person, one vote and equal protection, there's a ton of case law that indicates at all levels that districts must have roughly the same number of people in them, but how that gets applied varies wildly across the board. Now, historically, Pennsylvania has played it very, very safe at the congressional level, getting down to a variation between districts for its congressional maps of only 1 or 2 people. There's no real indication that that's necessary, but it does protect a map against a court challenge. The problem, though, is that device has been used for partisan advantage, because once you start tweaking districts down at that detailed level, you can finagle the lines a lot in the name of population equivalence when you're actually trying to achieve partisan advantage. The third hard criterion is Voting Rights Act compliance. But the Voting Rights Act leaves a lot of wiggle room for interpretation. In principle, if you have an opportunity for minority representation, you are supposed to take advantage of it. You're supposed to draw lines accordingly. But how far you really need to go in order to create those minority opportunity or majority districts is left ambiguous and varies according to a whole lot of local circumstances, like do the minority population or minority communities tend to vote together? If they don't, well, then the fact that you can get a district up over 50% total minority population, voting age population, doesn't really matter because they don't vote together anyway. A similar question about like-minded white constituencies. Do they, is voting highly racially polarized the way that it tends to be in the Deep South? Or, as in many suburban districts, do you have white neighborhoods that actually tend to vote with their Black neighbors or adjacent Black communities? If so, then the Voting Rights Act gives you more latitude. Again, the VRA, while great in principle, is often abused for partisan purposes because it can become an excuse for packing minority votes into majority-minority districts. So all of these principles, which seem great and which we espouse as nonpartisan organizations, can be abused for partisan purposes. So those are the hard criteria. Then you've got softer ones where you're trading things off against each other and the standards aren't entirely clear and you get to set the priorities for what's important to you. Compactness is one. There are different ways to measure it. The original metrics for compactness were how far does a district vary from a perfect circle? But that was quickly recognized as an imperfect metric because if you have a district which is a perfect circle, but which has to reach out into the ocean to grab 6 people who live on an island, it no longer looks geometrically like a compact district, but actually all the people are in a nice compact circle. You just had to extend out into the water because those people who live on the island had to be in some district somewhere. We're supposed to minimize splits, and the Pennsylvania Constitution pretty clear about that. But which splits are important? We know we're really supposed to try to minimize county splits. Municipalities, only when necessary should they be split. But again, you're trading that off against other priorities. Then you've got the tougher ones to measure: geographic boundaries, communities of interest, which different people view in different ways. So now it's getting softer and fuzzier. And then finally, you've got a set of overtly partisan criteria, which are also important to us as nonpartisans. Because, for example, are competitive districts a good thing or a bad thing? Well, depends on your perspective. If you're trying to achieve proportionality or proportional representation, a competitive district could actually tend to tip things toward non-proportional representation. If, for example, you have, and as we do in Pennsylvania at the congressional level, if you have roughly 5 districts that figure to be contested, but 4 of those are held by Democratic incumbents, making those districts more competitive actually makes it more likely that you'll have wildly non-proportional representation. And as a result, maps that have a lot of competitive districts have a very high probability in the midterms of producing a 12-5 split in the Republicans' favor, because a very, very slight shift in the statewide vote could tip all of those districts in one direction. Very unlikely they would shift in the other direction. Can you pursue partisan advantage? The Supreme Court says, yeah, up to a point you can. But that's an open question in Pennsylvania. Based on League of Women Voters suit from 2018, the Supreme Court takes a very dim view of maps that overtly pursue partisan advantage. And lastly, what about incumbents? Should we protect incumbents? Should the people drawing the maps be allowed to go after incumbents, target them? And I mean, all of those things sound terrible. And as nonpartisans, we think we should just draw on a blank sheet and ignore incumbency. But at the same time, if you totally ignore the existing districts, as terrible as the current maps are for the legislature, if you totally ignore them, you may actually disrupt civic participation by voters who, A, like their representation, and B, are simply comfortable with where they are and who represents them. So all of these factors have to be traded off against each other. A couple of final notes in response to questions that we got ahead of time. Which of these criteria apply or have to be obeyed in drawing a congressional map? Well, population equivalence, probably, although there is actually no requirement on the books that population be equivalent. The Supreme Court has just said that the population of districts does have to be roughly equal at the congressional level, and the Voting Rights Act. Those are the only two that are clearly enforceable on a congressional map. For legislative maps, where you actually have state laws coming more into play, there's probably a whole lot of additional factors in each state. And in Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court has judged that the state constitution does apply to our drawing of the congressional map. So we know that there are additional rules that apply to our congressional map that are not actually federal requirements endorsed by the Supreme Court. That's why the 2018 case had to be decided the way that it was in front of SCOPA, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, and would not have succeeded in all likelihood in front of the US Supreme Court. There have been, I think I've addressed general questions about criteria and the specific criteria that apply to the congressional maps. And the other request we had ahead of time was to dive in and look at maps. And I'm happy to do that, but maybe we could pause for questions about what I've said so far, because I hope I haven't confused everybody too much. Okay, good. So, go ahead. I think I heard a voice. Nope, somebody's just off mute. Okay. What you see in front of you is, or at least I hope you see it in front of you, is the Pennsylvania state Senate map as drawn today. Now, what I'm hoping that we can all get out of today's session is a view of the way that the map exists today and ways that it could be made better. And I hope that we can all reflect those opportunities for improvement in our input, not just to League of Women Voters and Fair Districts, but also to the LRC itself and for the congressional map to the government committees. So again, this is the current map. I don't think anybody else on the call is with me in Senate District 20. Again, this is a state Senate map, and it is heavily gerrymandered. District 20 is kind of notorious as a horribly gerrymandered district. The gerrymandering of SD20 has evolved over time. SD20 used to be a perfectly reasonable district in Luzerne County, but over time it's evolved in this bizarre way and is now a collar, heavily gerrymandered collar around Lackawanna County, trying to avoid all those Democratic voters in Scranton. And then it was further gerrymandered to interlock it with District 14 on the last cycle in 2012 to protect two incumbents. And that's a classic example of how you end up with these horribly shaped districts. They may start out reasonable. If you go back to the 1965 map, 20 and 14 both look fine. But over time, Monroe and Pike, for example, have gotten more and more separated. And this is the first time we've been separated completely. And the shapes evolve in bizarre ways with each redistricting cycle. We're hoping we can fix it holistically this time. Now, I think most of you all are probably in District 40, represented by Senator Scavello. But it's possible that some of you, assuming you're all in Monroe, it's possible that some of you in Northern Monroe are actually grouped together with District 22. And the reason you see it that way, the reason it's drawn the way it is, and the reason why District 22 overlaps a little bit into the blue areas of Luzerne County is because when the LRC drew this map in 2011, 2012, they had a couple of things in mind. One, they wanted to protect those incumbents in all four of those districts, 14, 20, 22, and 40. And they also wanted to make those seats as safe as possible for one party or the other. So what we wound up with in our region were 3 very, very safe Republican seats and 1 very, very safe Democratic seat. 22 now has a new senator, as you know, elected in a special election. Senator Scavello has been there for a while, and my understanding is District 40 was drawn to his specifications. So what what I'd invite at this point, before we go into my thoughts and FDPA's thoughts on how this particular map might be redrawn, I wonder if anyone in the group wants to come off mute and comment on the way it's drawn now, what you like about it, what you don't like about it, and how it could be improved. Seems like it's a shy group this morning. Everybody needs a second cup of coffee. Okay, I guess.
Well, Michael.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
The collar, well, it's obvious when you look at it, as you said, somebody drew this map with the intent of making sure that whoever was in those seats got reelected. And it makes no sense to have a collar around a 20 District 22. I don't know how they could say that it is contiguous, but it certainly is awkwardly contiguous in looking at it. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense from my standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I should add a note about District 14. 14 used to be a competitive district. When it was first drawn in 2012, not only was it reasonably competitive, it actually leaned blue, and the senator, John Udacek, was a Democrat at the time. As the district became redder and redder, it seems that Senator Udacek read the handwriting on the wall, and after the 2018 election, where he was reelected narrowly, he actually switched caucuses, and he became an independent, dropped his party representation, and became a Republican. Now, what sort of backroom deal he had with the Republican caucus leaders to induce him to do this, we don't know, and we're going to ignore that in our discussion within FDPA and I'm sure League of Women Voters, because if we start trying to play that inside baseball or anticipate how it might go, we're going to end up with a suboptimal result as well. But it's useful background to know that that's how a district like this happens. And now, rather than trying to protect a Democrat, this was a deal cut in 2012 to protect our senator, Lisa Baker, in 20, as well as Senator Udacek in 14. Whether Senator Udacek has a deal with Senator Ward to redraw his district in a favorable way and to preserve his district, even as it gets ungerrymandered this time around, we don't know. We don't really care, but it is something to keep in mind in the background. That's how this happened. Now, the collar around 22 evolved over time. That's not a new thing. That dates back to 1965, after the districts all had to be redrawn to conform to the Voting Rights Act and a Supreme Court decision having to do with population distribution. But it has gotten worse and worse over time. Now, that brings up an interesting point. One reason why we'd sort of like to start with a fresh sheet of paper rather than try to preserve the cores of existing districts is that the current maps are so bad that any attempt to preserve district cores or the general shape of the current map is likely to preserve and build upon the crimes of the past. And you'll never get a good map building on a bad map. So if there aren't any questions about the existing map or comments on the existing map, I'll go to
Debbie Trudeau has her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Debbie.
Hi, Michael. I realize all of you are more familiar with your local area than I am. Could you please show the precinct partisan lean in this map?
Sure. I believe if I go here, yeah, there it is.
Okay, so
and
that's
you can see it's pretty overt, isn't it?
this is the district lean, but there's another way to look at it by precinct.
Yeah.
Where up in the just below where it says districts, it says precincts partisan lean.
Yep.
That one.
And
you may have
granular.
You may have to undo the one above it.
Right. There you go.
Because this is what, yeah.
Yeah, you can see what they were working with when they drew this map. Now, remember, the current map was drawn in 2011, and adopted finally, I think in 2013, after a lot of wrangling. The area around Wilkes-Barre in Luzerne County has gotten progressively grayer and then gradually pinker. And that's one of the reasons why Senator Yudichak made the decision that he did. When this map was drawn, he was in a light blue district. Now he's in a pale white district and probably hoping that it's redrawn a little bit redder. But even now, I think we saw a light pink shade to the current District 14. Back in 2012, that same District 14 was light blue. So you see how the partisanship has shifted over time.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Shifting over to Monroe County, and most of which is in District 40. There you can see the distribution of Democratic and Republican voters in Monroe, and some of the motivations that partisan mappers have as they redraw Monroe County. And you will see this echoed not just in the current map, but likely in the partisan maps that will be proposed. Now, we haven't seen those maps yet. I promise you they exist on a secured hard drive somewhere in the cloakrooms of both caucuses, but we haven't seen them and we probably won't see them. But if you were taking a partisan view and trying to, say, redraw District 40, you would probably not want to go anywhere near Stroudsburg. Oh, I'm sorry, my camera slipped there. So you were probably seeing my ceiling. But this is the view. It's not as granular, but this is essentially the view that we, to some extent, but definitely the partisan mappers working for each caucus will take as they draw their proposed maps. So what you're likely to see out of the Democratic caucus is a spreading to the extent that they can without undermining their whole constituency, or losing all these districts. They'll try to spread those concentrations of dark blue across multiple districts. The Republicans, as you saw on the current map, will take that slice of northern Monroe and try to pack it together with Scranton so that there are as few blue votes in the remaining districts as possible. Now, what we're currently looking at, and I think we've got a couple of examples here. Yeah, here's one version of an FDPA map, and I'll zoom in on it. And this is where we really want feedback from folks who actually live in the places we're talking about. I'm going to zoom in, and we're probably not too interested in Schuylkill County today, but this is, now I should emphasize, this is one scenario that Fair Districts is looking at as for a possible proposed map, which takes most of Monroe, and I'll zoom out a bit so we can see it better, most of Monroe, and basically the core of the Poconos, puts it together with Pike County and Wayne County. Now, granted, northern Wayne County is quite rural. I've spent a lot of time up there. I mean, I love it, but it's like cow country. But the lower half of Wayne County really is part of the Poconos until you get up to Lake Wallenpaupack and past Hawley toward Honesdale. You really are in the Poconos. So it seemed reasonable, and since we're stuck in a corner of the state anyway, and northern Wayne can't really go anyplace else, we kept it together with the proposed District 20 on this particular map. We have other maps where all of Wayne County is in 22 or 23. We have versions where Wayne is cut in half and only the part that clearly belongs with Pike and Monroe is in District 20. I think down at the southern end of Monroe, it's worth stressing, you have some very red areas actually, and I'll mouse over them so that you can see the names of the places. So we're talking Polk, Eldred, and particularly Ross, which tend, and on this map they tend to get mapped together with Carbon, which is a significantly redder county than Monroe, or even together with northern Northampton County. The boundary between Monroe and Northampton, and again, we'd appreciate feedback on this, The boundary between Northampton and Monroe is generally viewed as the boundary between the Lehigh Valley and the Poconos. Carbon's a little ambiguous because the Lehigh, I mean, the river actually does flow up that way. But generally speaking, that northern boundary of Northampton County is viewed as kind of a barrier on all the maps. And so you'll see congressional districts drawn that way, where the 7th district ends at the northern end of Northampton and the 8th district begins right about where this Senate District 20 does. And we'll get to Congress if we have time. But I'm using the Senate as an example because it's the one I know best. So again, I'll open it up for comment or question on why it's drawn this way on this particular map, what other criteria we've considered, and or what other scenarios we've considered, and where we ought to go from here. Comments welcome from anyone in the group, particularly if you live in Monroe.
I would comment in general about the process. We talk about Congress. The bigger the district, the less the tiny details matter, frankly.
Right.
But Senate being smaller, clearly there are some weird shapes that need changing. And then when you get to looking at the house maps, those get the weird all. And those carve through neighborhoods, they slice streets. In my area, there is a district line that follows a 200-year-old township line, and it has nothing to do with the street. So it cuts cul-de-sacs, it cuts through people's houses. It's totally impractical. So Michael, if you want to jump to some house maps, I think that would be illuminating in your area.
Sure, I don't think we have that problem as much up in the Northeast because the Northeast is somewhat more sparsely populated. And Stroudsburg and East Stroudsburg are not big enough to require a municipal split. But if we kind of zero in, this is one scenario. Again, it is not a proposal. FDPA hasn't shown this to anybody. It's just one scenario that we're considering within the mapping team of FDPA, and we want you to influence it. But anyway, in this particular version of the house map, you've got a district in southwestern Monroe, 103. You've got a district in based around the core Water Gap, East Stroudsburg area, 104. And then you've kind of got the leftovers, which is northern Monroe County, and no offense to anybody who lives there, but the mapping tends to play out this way. If you start from the Monroe-Northampton border and work your way north, you tend to end up with a population that isn't quite big enough to form a district. And so you have to go in one direction or another. This particular map goes up into Wayne to grab the southern tip of Wayne County, and also northeast into Pike. This map actually crosses the Monroe Pike border with two different districts, because 104 grabs a little bit of population from Pike as well. A lot of other
Michael,
variations. Oh, sorry, go
Michael,
ahead.
is that one of the maps that is under? Oh, okay, that's a house draft. Is that a Republican version, or is that the Fair Districts version?
That is one of several Fair Districts draft scenarios.
Okay.
Just to be absolutely clear, the drafting process within our little mapping crew is not a progressive one where we like improving software where, you know, we have version 1.02 and then 1.03 comes out and we throw away 1.02. 1.02 and 1.03 may look similar, but just because we've come up with a 1.03 doesn't mean 1.02 is obsolete. They may actually be options that are being considered side by side, with small differences between them, often incorporating local input. Go ahead.
And again, to reiterate, none of these maps are ever going to become the state maps. These are just our tinkering with the process so we can get inside of the heads of the people that do have to do the work. It's not easy. You have to look, you get as close as you can, looking at it at the city level and then at the precinct level, and then you look at the data blocks level So it gets tinier and tinier. You're carving up, a tiny block in a small town to get the population numbers to work right. Some people suggested that we draw the lines through backyards instead of on streets, which is kind of interesting. If you're in a small neighborhood, you probably have more to do with the people that live across the street from you than you do with the people whose house is behind you. So it's a way to explore the process. And if you look at these maps and say, oh, there's a good idea, or there's a terrible idea, look what it does to my neighborhood. That's the kind of feedback we're looking for, and present that to the people who are drawing the maps, your legislators, the commissioners on the LRC, that kind of thing.
think
And
Renee-
just to,
I think
go
Renee
ahead.
had a question.
So Renee has
Renee,
a
do you-
question in the chat. She has,
Excuse
is
me,
a balance of rural and urban areas also used to assess new maps?
It's a hard question to answer because the term balance could be interpreted several ways. Renee, if you want to come off mute and
Well, yeah,
sort
what
of
I mean
elaborate,
is-
go ahead.
Yeah, what I mean is that, we go up into Pike County, which
Mhm.
which shores up Mario Scavello in a lot of the, being reelected. So I didn't know, when I say balance, I just meant something that would be a little bit more drawn in than the previous map. That's all, because it goes up into Pike County for rural. So again, I don't know numbers, demographics, those variables. I don't know how much, when you're looking at reassessing or, proposing a reassessment of a map, how much you'd have to think in those terms also, a little bit wider out than your own neighborhood or your own particular district area.
Thanks for that. It's a great question. Debbie, do you want to answer it in general terms? Maybe I can talk about what we've been doing within the mapping team.
I do, because where I live in Center County, we are a small urban district with a major university. Penn State is here, and we are surrounded by rural districts. And when I went in and drew my sample map for the Center County, I took our school district, which is have 2 house districts of its own, and I made 2 very urban districts, and then spread out. I wanted to do my slicing apart in the rural areas. I don't think one state forest next to another state forest, anybody's going to care where we put the line there, but it matters a lot where those lines go in urban neighborhoods.
It sure
Great
does.
point.
And as far as blending urban and rural or blue and red areas, it can be done for good motives or for fairly devious partisan motives. For example, having relatively competitive districts may be a good thing because it's believed to push politicians a little bit toward the center and reduces polarization. On the other hand, that sort of blending can be used as a technique for cracking an urban core or a vast expanse of rural voters who tend to vote one way or another, and for partisan mappers to achieve the 55-45 balance that they need to have a reasonably safe district. I don't think there's an across-the-board answer to whether balance is pursued or whether it's a good or bad thing. I would say in general, it's a byproduct of pursuing other priorities as opposed to being a priority that is pursued in its own right. I can say within the FDPA mapping team, it has not really been discussed prominently, except when we look at maps that we've developed using other criteria, and we notice that that blend has happened, we'll discuss whether in that particular circumstance, it's a good or a bad thing. I think in the case, for example, of Monroe County, it makes an awful lot of sense to have a House district centered around East Stroudsburg that isn't diluted by a lot of rural areas. And similarly, well, with the Senate, it's tougher because you need more population. But I think the subtext of the question with Senator Scavello is that district was crafted very carefully with his input to ensure that he could carry a district where Democrats or where demographics rather might be running against him over time. And of course, his party will try to redraw it in a way that keeps it relatively safe for him. By the way, I have nothing personal against Representative Scavello or Senator Scavello. He in fact presided over my wedding at Skytop back when he was mayor of Mount Pocono. So, I mean, I have a soft spot for him personally, but that doesn't influence my view of the 40th Senate district, which is a mess.
Michael, if I can just,
yeah, go ahead.
Michael, we are about 2 minutes out from the end of our time. And I wanted to know if anyone who's on the call has any questions, if they haven't put it in the chat at this point, if they want to unmute and answer any questions before we close this session.
Quick comment. Can you hear me, David?
Yes, Barbara.
Just a quick comment. I've been around a long time, and I often said that Monroe County was split. And when I was growing up in Hamilton Township, our identity went with the Lehigh Valley, and above Tannersville, the identity went with the Wyoming Valley. And that always, my example always in the library world was the Girl Scout Council went to the north, the Boy Scout Council went to the south, and that was another kind of illustration of Monroe County north-south split with the Wyoming versus the Lehigh Valley. And I just think it's interesting that some of this parallels all of that.
In response to that great comment, I would like to show just quickly one proposed congressional map because it highlights that point. And I'm happy to stay on to talk about Congress if anybody else does, if that's okay, Dave. I mean, I love talking about this map and any other proposal for Congress. But this is Draw the Lines Pennsylvania's Pennsylvania Citizens Map. And when it loads, and I'm going to get rid of the city lines and a whole bunch of other clutter, you'll see that this version of the Northeast reflects, I think, what you just said, that there are parts of southern Monroe County that really do identify with the Lehigh Valley. And it happens that the Lehigh Valley District, CD7, needs some additional population and goes up and grabs it from southern Monroe, where the rest of Monroe County is grouped with, as you say, the Wyoming Valley and the rest of the Pocono region, plus, you know, northern Wayne, because it has to go somewhere. So I think there's been good sensitivity in DTL in crafting the northeastern corner of this map to the fact that the Wyoming Valley, I don't know if you can see me mousing over it, the Wyoming Valley really has a distinctive character running through Luzerne, and that really does mark a dividing point between the Wyoming Valley or the Scranton-Wilkes-Barre area and rural Pennsylvania, which you see drawn here as CD9 in light blue. So I think they did a really good job of capturing that basic character of the three essential regions of northeastern, central eastern Pennsylvania. But again, if you have comments on the Pennsylvania Citizens Map, by all means, go to the Draw the Lines website and submit your comments there, because they are loving the citizen input from all regions that they're getting on this map.
So Michael, this just briefly before we close. So this is the proposed version of the congressional map.
Right.
And Pennsylvania is going to lose one representative due to the census. So we're going to be
That's
down
right.
to 16 or 17. Is it
down to 17, from 18 to 17.
Right. So this is especially important this year to see what the new congressional districts actually look like. We wanted to keep this meeting to about an hour. So
There's one more question from Renee, and I see Renee is
Okay.
unmuted.
Renee?
Yes, I just wanted to know if there was a Fair Districts mapping group working with the districts that overlap into Monroe County. If there's one already established.
We have a team of, I think, 6 or 7 people that is mapping in different regions of the state,
Yes.
covering the whole center of the state.
Okay.
I don't think we have it by county. We have more by
Okay.
region.
I just wanted to know if our questions would flow into someone that was already representing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually,
Michael-
that's my job. I'm supposed to do that, and Carol Kinholm will be very disappointed with me if I don't bring that feedback back. So keep
Okay.
it coming. I'm happy to field questions if you want to email them into either Fair Districts or League of Women Voters. They'll
Okay.
get routed to me, and I'll make sure your input is incorporated into the mapping. Because what we do in each region affects every other region, we don't really break up the map by region. We can at the house level. At the house level, we did that. Can't really do it on the other maps because there's too much flow effect when you change the Northeast. It affects everything else.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I
Thank you
want to
so
thank
much.
I want to thank Debbie and Michael today. Really appreciate, this has really been an informative session, and it really highlights the complexities of what it's going to take to fairly draw maps. So we actually have each citizen, one vote, one person, one vote in Pennsylvania, which we clearly do not have today. Lauren, do you have any other comments?
I do not. I also want to echo our thanks to our special guests coming in and talking to us and our membership, as well as those who are going to watch on Facebook about the redistricting. I'm going to end the Facebook Live, but please feel free, League, if you want to stick around and we can be private on Zoom to further discuss this. Thank you so very much.